Peace be with you.
Yeah, peace be with you.
How are you feeling?
Very good, very good. I've seen you use the word alafia.
Yeah.
Yeah, but alafia is what I even got to know is one of the alafia albosa. Those are words that are Arabic influenced words.
Àlàáfíà fún yín nílé yo?
Yeah, alafia fuinile, which is not yeah, alafia is not. It's a Yoruba word, but it was. Will I say it's a bastardized word, Arabic word. So it's just like what we call adura in Yoruba, but another word could be dua in Islam. There's a word called dua, but what that means when those words, of course, when they move, when they get transported, the it's adapts to the new environment and then takes on a life of its own. So we wouldn't be wrong to say it's a Yoruba word. It's just like using Latin script or Arabic script while you are then writing your own Yoruba language.
There's a loss in translation somewhere.
It's not a loss in translation. What I would say is that it's not, because it means peace be unto you.
Yeah.
And I tried to check. I checked about it, and the word peace Yoruba it's not in Yoruba cosmology. You cannot give anybody peace. Peace comes through your own individual practice, which is like meditation, quiet time. That is how you generate your own inner peace. So it is in the Abrahamic tradition that you have the idea of peace be unto you.
And how does it contrast with Yoruba cosmology?
Yeah, that's why I said that in Yoruba tradition, the word alafia from Ileyi, it's more like a way of thinking that came in through the Arabic and the Jewish influence. And these two cultures are very much related. They are all ancient Near Eastern culture, so they have their own. It's kind of related in a way, and they kind of influenced one another. If you cannot study Jewish culture in isolation, you have to study it with the Sumeric, Babylonian, Assyrian civilization, and even Egyptian civilization. So my point now is that the alafia, we have Hausa group in the north. They call it lafia, but in our own side we say alafia. You can see, so it's the word is an Arab. It has its origin in Arabic, but then as it gets to Hausa land, it changes in its in its wordings, and also in its I'm not so sure if the meaning changed, but in the case of alafia too, the way we pronounced it changed, but it has an Arabic origin. Yeah, so many words like that. Yeah, and even so many things that we take for granted, just like alcohol. Alcohol has its origin in the Arabic language. So
this really brings a profound insight.
Yeah, because it really, if when you meet with because we still have our own custodian of knowledge, which we call Babalawo. So
that's what it means,
Babalawo, yeah, which is just the healer.
Okay.
But the father is going to heal. Babalawo.
And this is in Yoruba cosmology.
The Babalawo is just like our priest. It's the priest. They are also the custodian of knowledge, just like in every tradition. Before now, even in the British, even in the Western tradition, the priest, the Catholic, the monks were the custodian of not just the spiritual knowledge, but also the scientific knowledge. You get what I'm saying? So it was in our tradition too. We had them. They were healers. They were diviners. They were just solving different problems. So Yeah. So, but when you go to them, that word is strange to them because they will feel like, no, we don't. This is not our word. This is we don't believe that you can give people peace. Yeah, peace is what you internally you do the work through your home practice and you get your peace from maybe meditation, quiet time, and things like that. You
Wow.
don't. Nobody can say peace be unto you. It's not done.
This is
Yeah.
it really suggests that the words, how people use it, like they visualize also the meaning. It's not just saying things for saying sake.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people. Words are symbols. So, if we if German calls something ditch, if it gets transported, it might mean something else in another country, and yeah. So words are just symbols, and that goes to what I've always said, that symbolic culture goes in hand with knowledge progress. So yeah, it's important.
Hmm.
Yeah, because when we look at this civilization that had script is also symbols, because you A B C, these are just symbols,
I agree.
and when we put them together in a way, we can put an apple and put them together, we know, okay, this gives us apple, but in reality nothing is called nothing should be apple, but it is the idea and the meaning that has been given to it that makes us know that this is, when we see the word, that this is talking about apple. So each generation must then do a good job in making sure that they pass down the meanings of all the symbols and to the next generation, and it changes, because what means something today might mean something to the next generation, just as it changes across space. It could also change across, even within the same Arabic, it could also change over centuries, millennium, so yeah, I mean, there was a time I learned that the people, they were they were interested in making sure that the people learn all this because they wanted to have a better understanding of the Quran or maybe Arabic and all those things. So they were now trying to make some students in Pakistan. I saw the video to learn 14th or 13th century Arabic. So it's crazy. It's crazy, but yeah, that's just what it is. So
That's really like profound for sure.
yeah.
I wanted to go back to what you were saying about Babalao, how they were not just custodian of knowledge but also science as well. And I want you to describe how you view spirituality and science. Like, is it a science or is it completely like divided? Like, there's a split between spirituality and science.
Okay. To me, I would say people have been, pattern recognition is something that is built into man.
Pattern recognition.
Pattern recognition.
Mm.
In other words, we because that's what we do in science too. We gather data, and then what do we do? We gather data in Germany. We gather data in another country in Europe. We gather data in Africa. Then we can then say, oh, this claim seems generalizable, and it seems more like we are just trying to establish a pattern by gathering those data. And what I think is this about spirituality is that it's an experience. It's an experience, and every knowledge is gotten from experience. So, but the only difference between science of today and science of yesterday is that they've separated material and immaterial. So that's why you have the school of thoughts called materialism, and then you in the ancient times they didn't create that dichotomy, because to them materialism and immaterialism were one. But in this age, we just say no, we don't want to deal with this unknown element, and so we'll just stick with materialism, what we can and what we can see,
like tangible stuff.
Tangible stuff, yes. So that is what we are doing today, and the why do I call it a science? In another sense is that it's a science and it's also a art, because the more what I just feel is that yes, you might have a principle, justice, but if you might also learn about compassion, they are like that. They are like two different sides of a coin, and the heart of balancing is also what one must learn. Because most things are like two sides of the same thing, two different sides of the same thing, and it's about your ability to always know how to take elements from here, and then making it the right amount of proportion to solve or to do just to attend to whatever you need, So that is why I feel it is an art, because you have to be it's this skill of not being so rigid to one side, and then bringing these two seemingly opposing elements, and then making something out of it. It's something one must learn in this in one spiritual walk. And science as spirituality, again, I just spoke about the heart of it. Science, I think what I feel the mistake people make is that which is why people and that's a modern concept of spirituality, whereby, oh, I'm a Muslim, you are given a clear category of what it takes to be a Muslim, what you have to do, and you're being given your 5-day prayers. And then you also say, you're a Christian, you're being given a set of things you have to, For me, I just think it is our practices that really that really draws experience onto us. If our practices are true, we would definitely have good divine experiences, so to speak. So events, what are the divine experiences? You can call them moment of synchronicity. Because nobody ever sees God, nobody ever knows God. We can only have a glimpse, but we can begin to say, oh, we have several moments of coincidences that we can then say, no, this is the work of a divine mind. It is this phenomenon that has been happening throughout human history that we then begin to say there must be an unseen force. So you can then imagine people having experiences of synchronicity. And you remember I said knowledge is gotten from experience. So if people are having moments of synchronicity and highly improbable coincidences, and they are building a knowledge system out of it, it tells you it is a science, and if people are building knowledge system out of it, how do you, within your culture, how do you even reduce the superstition in it? How do you improve zoom in into the facts of it and reduce the superstition in it. Because what are the superstition? Superstition would be that what you can call bad science, perhaps a claim, a knowledge was developed, and suddenly it's not something that can be proven across time. It was maybe worked, but it was just a coincidence. But now it's a coincidence that is no longer happening going forward in the future.
So it's not durable across time.
Across time, So it could be, so when you look at it, you could say, okay, maybe that was not really that pattern recognition of that event. It was not really tested well enough. You get, that's where we are going back to hypothesis testing. So by the time it is the job of coming generation to not see the literature as being settled. We have to keep contributing to the literature. Because when you look at Christianity, it was canonized 2000, but who asked them to canonize it? Did God tell them to canonize and make it a formal book? It was just some guys who said, okay, I think we've done enough. Let's put it together. Let's put all these experiences together. And it would be a mistake for some people to say, this is now the word of God, because and it is settled. Nothing should be added. Nothing should be, at that point they'll be making a big mistake. And so that's why I say it is a science, and we must. The beauty of it is that we don't even have to keep. We can just do better science and look at across culture. In Christianity, we always do it. They're always there to establish a doctrine. You establish. You look through the mythologies. You look through the laws, and you look through the history, and sayings of the prophets, and warnings of the prophet, and you try to establish. And also, if you're a Christian, you then add Jesus' sayings to it. And if you see a pattern, a claim that is consistent across these four categorization of the books, you can then establish what they call a doctrine. Because at that point you establishing a truth is now what you would call what they would now call doctrine. So now if you can then take that outside that literature and even say, okay, let's investigate other cultures, and then look at their practices, and then begin to say and then look at practices that you can see that others have recognized and has generated certain experiences for them. And then begin to say, now because we have seen this pattern across different civilization, then we can then say this must be a true spiritual practice, or a good spiritual practice. You get what I'm saying? And then so that's how I see it. And I also believe that there could be also bad spiritual science. And bad spiritual science is when is what you see life sacrifice in the form of human life. And whether you like it or not, even in every culture or civilization, there's that element of wanting to sacrifice humans or sacrificing humans. But what you can say is that they always at the point they then develop and they advance beyond sacrificing humans, because it's now like what you now see is that the core of everything is pointing towards our own sacrificing of ourselves. So let me just stop this.
I mean, this part can also be open to debate too. Because I mean, I don't, like you said that in ancient time spirituality and science were tied together. That's mean the material and the immaterial were tied together. And a lot of spiritual practice, the sacrifice of self is applauded, like when one is selfless. But I mean, let's say in the case of human sacrifice, we can say that it's, material sacrifice. So it's a form of sacrifice toward a better good. I mean, for me, the way I see it, don't you think it's like a question of perspective, like paradigm, like cultural paradigm?
The sacrificing humans, right?
Yeah.
It could be. It could be. I've read another rituals, something on a book. Not I saw a documentary on that, and it's always done to just the way you spoke about it. That it's a paradigm. It could also be to the fabric of the society as a fabric, and if people are if there is okay, the concept of sacrifice is to ward off and also to enlarge. So in other words, whenever people want to enlarge themselves, they sacrifice. Then the question is, what is to sacrifice? Then if people want to ward off evil, poverty, or anything, they must sacrifice. The question is, what's form of sacrifice? Now we are now splitting the discussion into animal, human, and self-sacrifice. So now we go to human sacrifice, which is where you feel it's the paradigm. I once stumbled on a documentary whereby it is done to let's say somebody who corrupts the fabric of the society. Instead of sending people to prison, as we do in modern times, they just sacrifice those people so that the unity and the fabric of the society is not being destroyed. So if in that sense you might argue that it's served the goal of making sure that the tribe is united and nobody is corrupting the value system that creates a high trust society for them. So in that sense, yes, it serve a practical good, and but does it really serve a spiritual good? In the sense, it serves a communal good, but does it really serve a higher spiritual good? Why am I bringing this into context is that in Africa we still see blood money. People would do that for money.
With the albino, for example, sacrifice of albino.
Yeah, exactly.
And I had a Kenyan friend. He told me and this is not to shade anybody, but he told me Nigerians, for example, are very notorious for sacrifice, brutal sacrifice, like genital mutilation.
Yeah.
So it's not only in Kenya but many African countries where people rely on that to attain prosperity.
Yeah. That's where I'm really going to, because to the best of my knowledge, I just feel because when you're in the Yoruba literature, there was there's also, just like the case of Isaac, of people wanting to sacrifice human, there's also that kind of story too, whereby you give somebody to, but you could also see the later developments, which is why I said, whereby it's more like if we are looking for wealth, if we are looking for good home, we have to focus on our Iwa.
What is Iwa?
Iwa is your just the mastery of self.
Okay.
Yeah, self-restraint basically. The Iwa Kwele, in other words, making sure that you still your soul. The stillness of soul, because if you
Like stillness.
of your soul, making
Okay.
sure that your soul is in a state of discipline and it's not wandering.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, so so and many stories, many many folklores are developed around. If you pay attention to many folklores, many fairy tales, you will see that at the end of the day, what those fairy tales are really getting at is the stillness. Is that you must be disciplined. You must have, you must still your soul. You must know how to caution you. Use the right words. You know, you must your willpower. You know, making sure that they are under your control and not you being a slave to your emotion, basically. You know, so because it's like if you do not, if you have wealth, there's this saying like if you have wealth, you will lose it if in no time. If you because if you lack poor judgment, if you make emotion out of intense desire, or you just maybe somebody presents you an opportunity and because it consumes you the intense desire to and you cannot manage your emotion, it might lead you into losing that wealth as quickly as possible. So at the end of the day, it's your ability to calm your spirit. It's very key, you know. So my point is that yes, there are stories of human sacrifice, there are stories of animal sacrifice, but some would even argue that those animal sacrifices that are being made have a psychological connotation. They are symbolic representation of our psychological state.
The animal sacrifices.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Can you develop more on that?
Okay. Carl Jung also pointed to it that the animals are representation of our inner states, you know. So now, when they say sacrifice a particular bird, this bird might be a symbol of love. This bird might be a symbol of snail. It might say snail. It might be a symbol of, being slow to hunger. Because snail are slow, so like if you are slow to hunger, you might not chase away, because they might see that if the diviner divines for you, they might see that if you are just slow to hunger, how am I to put it? It's not like they are. It's there as means. It's always like the lessons that the scholars will bring into it, their interpretation, you know. But the idea is that sacrificing snail has a psychological connotation, and if you people not being able to be hunger. We see the story of Moses in the Bible and how he couldn't make it to the promised land because of hunger. So you also see, if you're also paying attention to biblical stories, you will also see that everything is directed towards emotional state, like be of good courage, otherwise that's when you overcome this land. So it tells you straight away that if you are not confident enough, you might not even possess what belongs to you. You get the journey of life. And if you are also given to hunger, you might also lose what should have come your way, because you cannot be tactical about your reach. That's So the humans, to the best of my knowledge, I just feel okay. Yes, human sacrifice in some cases serve a commoner good, in some cases serve a commoner good. Yeah, but is it really in the context of what is going on today, whereby people sacrifice for wealth? I think it's about spiritual science, and I think in my culture they will say "Ishe ni ogun ishe." It simply means the best form of sorcery against poverty is hard work.
Okay.
So it's goes.
So you tie magic with science and that quote alone, the best form of sorcery is by hard work.
It's by hard work. So
okay.
Yeah. So if you are now saying that yes, they accept the role of your destiny.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this story they normally say while I was growing up, is that there's a king. One was destined to be a king, and another one was destined to be a poor man. And because that one was said to be a king, said, "Oh, I'll be a king," and he didn't devote himself to practices of hard work, the science of hard work, and just went to sleep. And one said, "Never, I will never be poor," but devoted himself to the science of hard work, and by so doing, he was able to cause something to happen in the divine realm. And what does that mean? He was able to transfer the grace of the one destined to be the king naturally. He was able to transfer, and that he became, because he started working hard in the farm, and he grew so much of farmlands. And then there was now a time the kingdom was experiencing famine,
Mm-hmm.
and they needed somebody to feed them. The only person they could turn to was this guy that was devoted to the science of hard work, and because of that, he was able to put his demand, and he was able to negotiate that he wants to be their king, and the one that they told was going to be king didn't eventually become the king. So just by knowing how to devote yourself to science, certain spiritual practices and science, you are establishing cause and effect relationship, which is why I said the best form of sacrifice is, to me, is yourself. Yeah.
And the sacrificing of self is through the sense of hard work, working hard.
Working hard, yes. Even though your destiny it's gonna bring you mercy. It's gonna bring good luck. It's gonna bring you opportunities that somebody who might not be destined, for something spectacular. But if you are, it's over time. If you are not taking advantage of things, you are not using the opportunity. Somebody that is somewhere else who is devoted to practices would definitely cause and effect a change. So that's what I mean. So yeah. So it was just a word that yes, you are destined, yes, but you are still a co-creator. It's not that. In other words, it's not a fatalistic argument. You are a co-creator. You are going to do this with your creator in accomplishing what you will become, plus your character, your stillness of soul. Yeah. So that is it.
Wow, that is really interesting.
Yeah. You want to take this? There's another.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're not drinking something.
No.
Okay.
I think alcohol is not. I think, but I just.
If there was the earth, I would have poured libation, but I mean, I don't wanna dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's interesting. I mean, you talk about the stillness of soul. Like, how, in your view, one can strive toward attaining stillness of soul?
For me, I just, you can, if you pay attention, you will see the sound coming from the clock. Yeah, so when I wake up in the morning, I try to have a time,
Mm-hmm.
and I pray, and I just put my mind on that. Initially, when I started, my mind was running, all over the place. I couldn't even do it for 10 seconds. My mind would be thinking about, hey, this girl, hey, this guy. But later on, I started noticing that I can have my mind on it for 3 minutes. Even though I normally do it for like 15 minutes, the whole process. Now
15 minutes to 3?
now I can do the whole process for 3 minutes. But now I can have my mind not wavering
Okay.
for 3 minutes, and I will just keep my mind. And what I just realized is that whenever I'm doing anything, maybe studying, whenever I am even walking, I can put my whole attention is always in that point. I'm not outside, far away in my home.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not thinking about what is going on. I'm just in that spot, and I'm doing what I'm doing, carried away with that particular. So that's what I just know, and it's the ability to root yourself in the now. It allows you to make good decision
Mm-hmm.
at every point in time, because and also your choice of words as well. It makes you, before saying it, you think about forward, you think about backward, then you collapse it into now, and then you can say those things. Yeah. So yeah, for me, meditation is one, and there's also some. I think the Asian Near East culture. This is why for me, it's good to not be too judgmental of other culture, because there are things you can learn. There are things you can take in, and you take it from other culture, and then you name it after your own image. So even though I think meditation is in my culture, the quiet time, but you could also see that they have yoga in the Asian age, the Eastern culture. They have yoga. They have the practices of balance standing. I don't know what to call it, but basically I don't do all those ones. But I just stick to keeping my thoughts, meditation, keeping my thoughts on a particular event going on. It could be my breathing. It could be the sound of this clock. That's what I use here. Once I'm the holy one in the house,
Mm-hmm.
everywhere gets. So initially I tried breathing, then I realized that there's a sound that keeps banging in my head. Okay, so let me shift my attention instead of on the breathing. Let me shift it to the sound. So that was how I started the practice of keeping my attention on that time. And the beauty of it is that with that practice, you can decision making. It doesn't rush into you, because at the end of when you're about to make any decision, you can put yourself in the moment. Because when something happens, when we are being stimulated, we say that we are being stimulated for there's this thing I'm about to enjoy. There's this fear of this thing I'm about to lose. So, but when we keep ourselves in the moment, then we can then be able to make decisions.
And what is the mechanism for that? Because in the world we're living in, it's very difficult to have that zen, like to be zen.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things going on in the internet, on the news, a lot of things that grabs your attention left and right. As soon as you wake up, right, what is the first thing you do? You check your smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as you check your smartphone, you have you're bombarded with notifications, and in your mind, as Africans here in Europe, you thinking about many things. Family back home. It's been a while I haven't contact auntie. It's been a while I haven't contact uncle, cousins, grandpa. And then you have your life here as well. So your mind is always wandering. And plus, in this world that is very oriented towards the material, we were set up to be told that being productive is doing a lot, putting a lot of effort. And when your body demands rest and you're supposed to rest, you do not do a lot of action. And the trick is like you're not productive. So how do you find that Zen like despite all these stimuli?
Yeah, I think being able to eliminate stimuli is also very important. You know, I for a long time I never used Twitter. Last year I started. Last 2 years I started using Twitter. Now, since the beginning of this year, I had stopped going on Twitter. Now I no longer have this abundance of information, deluge of information, of this is going on, this is going on, this is going on, and I think that is what one needs to know how to eliminate, because at the end of the day you want to be a minimalist, and also being a minimalist simply means you want to remove as many clutter from your life as much as possible, and you keep your goal on things that are very important. Now, as I am, the only clutter I have is YouTube. Yeah, I just still keep that there because I can still manage it to a reasonable extent. And I learned from YouTube.
Just like as we are also educating viewers on very thought-provoking topics.
Exactly. So YouTube is the only one I find as a necessary disturbance, and just YouTube. And I also keep my attention because I move away from subject. I just move into realms of subject matter that the algorithm already knows the matter that I'm interested in. So if I feel that the algorithm is already suggesting me matters I'm not interested in, I just try to walk away from. Is it that I click twice or do not recommend this kind of program to me, so that I do not have this form of information. And by so doing, I have lesser things that are interesting to watch, because the algorithm already knows those things that needs to come my way. So by the time I'd seen this reasonable program, so practically when I check my YouTube, I don't really have except those things that are very important, but I don't really have much to watch anymore. So yeah, otherwise it would be, this is happening in Nigeria, this is happening, so
man, you must be very disciplined to reach that level where you are that minimalist of your digit, like consuming things on the internet. And
yeah, I mean it's of course it's the greatest strength of our age.
It's not easy.
It's not easy.
Yeah, because your intention is just craving to know more.
Yes.
And it's worse when you have a big thirst for knowledge. You just wanna consume everything that you find.
That's true.
And I don't know, how do you find the consuming knowledge in this day and age? Because before it was by reading, but now most people, they consume more through watching videos and listening to audios. I was even having this conversation with a friend where she was saying that now people listen to audiobooks, and now they listen it like at a higher speed. and even at a higher speed, like it's almost like a storyteller, because you're listening to a storyteller, and you don't pay attention to the pauses. You don't pay attention to
Paragraphs.
Exactly. It's just information like overload. So what is your thought on that?
Well, for me, I don't read the light materials. I read subject matters. Like I'm interested in international trade. I'm interested in macroeconomics. I'm interested in geopolitics. I love studying about probability as a mathematical field. I also love studying logic and logic, yeah, especially proving mathematics proofs and all those things. And I also love studying about metaphysics, sociology, study of society, and so culture. So the subject matter I go for are not like novels or storybook, So those things just interest me. So there are two ways I can get information. It's either I look at YouTube, or I get a book on a particular matter that I'm interested in. So because you cannot, I don't know, I rarely see this kind of book being available for
audio listening.
Audio listening, yeah. Because how do they do it? X plus this, it don't make any sense.
Might end up hurting your brain.
What?
I said might end up hurting your brain, this way.
It's very will work, because it might be that in explaining this thing to you, they will have to show you a map, they will have to show you a graph, they will have to show you a chart table. So you can't just pay attention to that. So I pay attention to economic, financial issues. Because I'm still thinking of something in finance. So I just know that things, subject matter like that, geopolitics, are things that are interesting to me. Yeah, so that's it.
I see. So one should just identify just the subject matters that interest them the most, and just dive deep into it. And in this case, in my case, I've realized that it's even difficult for me to say economics anymore, or sociology, or political science, because the categorization became very distinct with what we have now. But in reality, to really get a good grasp of social science, you would always find that you need knowledge of sociology, you need the demography to understand, to be a better finance person, because you want to do market analysis of the company. To understand demand, you need how do I put it? To do marketing research, you need to have good knowledge of demand function, how demand works, and then to understand demand, because it has to do with human behavior, buying things, consumer behavior. You would also be bringing knowledge of sociology, how subject matter of religion, lifestyle can impact how people, consumer preferences, So then you are using that to make a decision about a particular company, whether this company is going to do well or do bad. So you are already doing business analysis. You get what I'm saying? And then you are valuing the company as a finance person. So now you are doing you are now bringing finance into it again. So you can see that, and you also need to understand the demography of the place, So you can see that it's as much as
people create this dichotomy of this between the subject. The more you go deep, the more you realize that it's just a social world. It's like a social world, and you have to really understand what is going on at one individual thing. You would need to take into consideration what goes on outside of it. But that's with social science as a domain. Yeah. So it's I mean, now that's where I watched it. I talked about social contract.
Yeah.
Religion as a social contract. Now, I'd studied the Old Testament, especially the Torah, the book of history.
Okay.
And the book of.
What is the book of history, though?
Yeah, in the Bible, as categorization.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they call. Okay, the Christians call it Pentateuch. That's the Torah. But the book of history has to do with Chronicles, Kings, Samuel, Judges. These books are recording the history of a particular group. You get what I'm saying? It doesn't deal with the law. The law is the Torah. But this particular aspect of the Bible has to do with the story of a people. That's why I call it the book of history.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have the Kings, Samuel, all these books are just giving you chronicles of what took place. It's just a chronicle of what took place in the life of the children of Israel. So, and then you look at the book of Saints. The book of Saints are like Ecclesiastes, Proverbs, Psalm, all those books, you know. So my point is that religion as a social contract. It's easy to look at religion as just mere spirituality. But when you look at it closely, you would see that the love thy God is pointing to a mystical practice, mystical techniques that are permissible, that are not permissible. Why the love thy neighbor is talking about the communal science, the social contract that they should have as a society, you know. So my point is that if the ancient people, ancient groups, through their religion, were already doing social science. It's not just a field that we are just doing now. No, I mean, if you are interested in social science, you want to study Islamic civilization, you want to study ancient Near Eastern civilization, Chinese civilization, and their literature and all of that. Because at the end of the day, what these things are trying to achieve is how do people organize themselves socially? How do people organize themselves economically and even financially? Anytime I look at tithes, what the pastors preach is not what I see in the Bible. I just see a welfare system, because I have a lens of social science. So when I go into the literature, this thing you call tithe, it seems to me like a tax system that they are just using for wealth redistribution to create a welfare society. Now, is God happy with it? Of course, why won't God be happy with you making the lives of everybody in your society better? You get what I'm saying? So it's not for us to be rigid and say, we don't want to learn from other culture. It could be that some cultures might throw some matters to light vividly than our culture would have thrown the subject matters to light vividly. Now, there's this thing with the logic. If I'm trying to get to A implies C, what I'll first do is try to see A implies B, and maybe B implies C. By the time I can establish B implies C and A implies B, then I can then know by transitive inference, but that A, because A implies B, therefore B implies C, then therefore A implies C. You get what I'm saying? So even what I'm trying to now say is that if a subject matter does not get to you, when you look at your literature, you look at it in other people's culture, it's vivid. But in your own culture, it doesn't seem vivid. Okay, you like this idea. There is a way you can then begin to use logic to make sure that indirectly you get to that same practice that you feel it is very healthy in another culture, and you will get to that in your own culture. It might be a saying, and through saying you might just begin to deduce, and begin to put in some supposition in between, and before you know it, you've already abstracted just a few statements from your own literature, and by mere use of logic, you begin to deduce, and you get to the practice you find in another person's culture. By so doing, you've got the idea somewhere else, but now you have made it your own. You get what I'm saying? It's an idea you saw somewhere else, quite alright, you know. It's an idea you saw somewhere else. Now, you have scholars who are looking into your literature closely, they are now saying, oh, we don't really have this thing directly in our culture. Now you can say, is there any way we can get to that particular thing indirectly? What we see somewhere else. Okay, then what we will then do is to be, we might find a story or a folklore, a fairy tale, and then begin to use that and deduce to arrive at that similar conclusion of that culture. So my point is that it is how people contribute to their literature. It's how you make sure that your culture is relevant for modern times.
Like this element of timelessness.
As element of what?
Timelessness.
Yeah, timelessness.
Like the fact that it can like stay for a longer time, like survive you.
Good. Because to make sure it stays, you have to adapt. And you have to adapt. So every culture needs a reform. But you don't do it in such a way that you collapse the whole thing. Because if you do, you will collapse the society. And
how can you like prevent not to collapse the society?
That's where, by so doing, deductive reasoning, you would then be reinterpreting the old landscape. Because
I just thought of something like this table, right?
Yeah.
This table has, I think, 4 legs. So the 4 legs are the foundation of this table. And the way I thought about it is, you can maybe add any new elements to that table as long as the foundation of that table maintained like fixated, like stable, then the table is in a good shape. And I also thought about what you thought about at the beginning with alafia, how it's a bastardization from Arabic,
yeah.
But its usage doesn't corrupt Yoruba as a whole. But I think from a different perspective, one can see that it's not really part of the cosmology, but it doesn't corrupt as a whole. What do you think about it?
Okay, I will just go back to the table
Yeah.
that you lay down. You know, yeah, and that's why I said that you have your table.
Mm-hmm.
You it's not, you are not, you are still, you see an idea that you like, and then you look into your own literature, you are looking into your table, and you are then looking at, how can I use it, this table is like this, I want it to go higher this way. So how do I repurpose or reconstruct using the pillar and the elements of this table to make sure that it gets to this point. So that's what I mean by, okay, even though this table naturally doesn't get to this point, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to start constructing something like a ladder to make sure that I get to this place. Now I have to then look closely and within my own literature and say, okay, what is there within my own literature that I can use to as a justification or a foundational proposition to then begin to make arguments for this particular place I'm trying to climb to. You get what I'm saying? So your literature is going to be there, but you'll be using it as a foundational. It won't be like that, but you'll be using it as a foundational proposition to deduce till you get to this particular thing here. Now, in the course of getting to this, you pick one saying from your literature, and another saying is here in your literature. Okay, you could put here, and then you join it here. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Then you now say, okay, I haven't still gotten here. Then okay, there's one more saying here. I pick this saying here, or folklore, or fairy tale, I put it there. Then I make that judgment. I make that connection to join with this. Then now it's now becoming clear that I can get to this one. Then I then tie it back to this. Then I have created a justification for us to take that idea we have over there and bring it into our culture. But now we are doing it in a way that we can claim ownership of that idea. You get what I'm saying? So it's just the beauty of things, yeah.
And that can be extrapolated not only in literature too, not only in literature alone, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it can, everything we are doing is we are creating an argument for something. So we just have to make sure that in economics, in any field, and what we just need to do is logic makes us see what shouldn't have been seen. Because if we can say, okay, let's use elements of chemistry. Okay, if I don't know how to describe it, but let's say yellow can become blue, and something else can become. Then I can then say, okay, through connecting the dots, because that's what we are doing here. Like by connecting the dot, then I can say, oh, this element, and I combine it with this, should be able to get to this. Then I go to my lab. Logic has gotten me there already, but now I need to put it into experiment. Then I put it into experiment. Then I try to verify what my imagination, rationalism has already gotten me to. Then when I get it, I say, yes, we got it. So that's what I'm saying is that there are two schools of thought in knowing something, rationalism and empiricism. Yeah, and rationalism says, oh, human beings are naturally brilliant, things like that.
And empiricism?
Empiricism says no, it is when people are beginning to um, brush their mind with certain ideas, they begin to make connections. And as they make connections, they begin to generate other ideas. You know, it's not that they are inherently embedded with ideas, but if you have fed them A, B, they can then say A, they can then deduce C, you know, something like that. So that is how the mind works. So if the generation before us generates it up to an extent, well, then the next generation doesn't have to go back to how they got to that point. What they just need to do is stand on the pillar of where they started and begin to make their own connection and begin to improve the ladder and abstraction of what's out there. So yeah, so empiricism is, for me, is the key thing, but then rationalism, knowing, connecting dots, is also empiricism is how we first take knowledge from the physical world. Then but when we take it to the physical world, it then goes into our mind. Then from there we can begin to make generate ideas. Then this idea, we don't just let it be in our head, we have to test it. And so we go back to empiricism again, you know, to validate what the ideas we already have in our head. So that is how I think humans make progress. And that is how we must encourage our kids to make progress as well.
And we also have to encourage them to make works that stand the test of time.
Yeah.
Not just something that can be useful for a short gap of time. It has to benefit, you know, not you and your immediate environment. Like, that's the way I see it. I don't know how you see it, but also benefit your children, your children, and, you know, generation to come.
It's good, but I also feel there's something out there that always make every generation must fight their battle.
Of course.
Yeah. So yes, you can enjoy the legacy to a point, but then you also have to, if you do not, there's this Chinese saying that the world does not go beyond 3 generations.
Whoa. and that's interesting. Not beyond 3
generations, yeah.
Oh.
And why did they say that? Is that, okay, maybe there's a poor generation, they work hard, they create wealth. The coming generation, because they saw the hardship and they are able to balance it, they also do a little bit of work and make sure that. But the third generation didn't see any poverty at all, so they are like, oh, you know. so after that generation, they just messed this up, you know. So, but that's where religion now comes in, because religion is a tool for ensuring that you pass down your civility to the next generation. For me, I think we are putting ourselves at the disadvantage in a way, because of course, the way we adopt religion, and we are not really seeing it as a science, so we just see it as, oh, this book is true. It's really a wrong way of approaching things. You know, we should demand a rigorous standard for any literature we adopt. Of course, traditionally, you ask a very simple question: how many of us care about the history of the Quran, the history of the Bible? And I think the Bible and the Quran itself cannot validate itself. You have to go outside the system to validate the system. So we need to know the history. Unfortunately, we don't care about all these things. It's a shame. But but if even at that, you would even see people who go to seminaries and all that, and you see them because it's the Old Testament you get to see a civilization. The New Testament does not let you see a civilization, you know. And for growing up as a Christian, in my background, we still resonated with Old Testament, but nowadays you just see people trying to just, you know, get to, like, say, think, oh, it's not, it's all done, you know, like they just want to stick to the New Testament and all of that. But I think that's not how reality works, and God is, to my knowledge, God is reality, and I just approach it as metaphysics, and I do not take it as an identity. I just approach it as metaphysics, and I'm trying to establish cause-and-effect relationship through the literature, and I'm also trying to look at social practices that create healthy community and citizenship. So that's how I approach it. Well, yeah, that's it.
Wow. That sounds like this is the perfect recipe for a second part. Alright. Well, I'm really grateful for your time and energy. I really appreciate.
Thank you very much.
O'Shea, right?
Yeah, O'Shea.
O'Shea.
O'Shea means thank you.
Yeah, this is not a bastardization of any other language.
No bastardized.
Okay. And if you have like a message that you want to share, like with you know, our people, like a message like across time, what will be the message?
To me, I'm still being a spiritual person myself, and somebody that believes in the divine. I would say it's we must the most important thing that I feel is important is people to ask, how do we know, you know, not what we know, because it's if you get to know, if you know how to know, and you know, you pass this to your children, they will figure out things themselves. Now while we're growing up, they just told us what to know. You know, this said this said this, but it's not rigorous enough. You know, so basically, how to know is very important, so that we don't fool ourselves. We want to demand the rigorous standard to knowing anything and believing anything. You have to demand you have to continuously stress test what you have been taught. You have to stress it, you know, make sure you are not that you want to go into an echo chamber where they'll be validating, you know, your claim. You want to go into opposing groups that have something different to say about your worldview, and by so doing you stress test your worldview, you know. And two, social science I think it's an ongoing thing, and even in people should not see people should know that as we are evolving as a society, even though you have social science and religion, but we must continuously evolve with the time and make sure we evolve our social science to make sure that it creates a thriving community, and it also creates a prosperous, a scholarly community, and at the same time a trust community where people care for one another. So that's just it for me. Yeah.
Wow. O'Shea. Thanks for watching the podcast until now. So take great care of yourself, and until the next episode.